Title: He kept calling from inside the house, but no one was there. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins that in a world where darkness hides in ordinary places, some stories warn us that safety is only an illusion. This is one of those stories, unfiltered, disturbing, and rooted in real terror. If you think you're alone right now, listen closely. By the end, you may question every quiet corner of your home. And if you dare continue, remember to subscribe for more true nightmares. The house had always seemed ordinary from the outside, a narrow two-story structure tucked at the end of a quiet street where nothing interesting ever happened. Neighbors walked their dogs, children played in tidy yards, and porch lights glowed softly in the evenings. No one suspected anything strange could exist behind the thin walls of that house, and for most of its history, nothing had. But when Daniel moved in, the entire place seemed to shift, as if waking from a long sleep it had taken deliberately. Something quiet and patient stirred in the shadows, waiting for a reason to reveal itself. Daniel had chosen the house because of its low price and convenient location. He worked long hours and needed a place that didn't require much maintenance. The previous owner had passed away unexpectedly, leaving the property behind, and Daniel hadn't questioned why it was still on the market after so long. He only cared that it was cheap. On the day he moved in, he noticed nothing unusual except for an unshakable feeling, like the house was watching him. He shrugged it off, assuming it was exhaustion from the move and a symptom of the stress he carried from work. For the first few nights, he slept soundly. Work kept him busy, and by the time he returned each evening, he was too tired to notice anything odd. But subtle changes began. Doors he was sure he closed were slightly ajar. Lights flickered in the hallway. The floor creaked at night, as if someone were walking slowly just beyond his bedroom door. He blamed old wood, faulty wiring, and his own imagination. He wanted logical explanations, and he clung to them. The first phone call happened on a Wednesday night. Daniel had just stepped out of the shower when his cell phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. The screen showed his own number calling. Confused, he answered, expecting maybe a glitch or a telemarketer using spoofing software. But the moment he pressed the phone to his ear, he froze. There was faint breathing on the other end, slow, deliberate, and too close to feel accidental. He hung up and stared at the screen, feeling a chill crawl down his spine. He tried convincing himself it was a technical error, but the unease lingered. But the calls kept coming. Sometimes once a night, sometimes 3 or 4 times. Always from his own number. Always with that same low breathing, like someone standing inches from the speaker. One night, just before bed, he received another call. When he answered, the breathing sounded louder, heavier, as if the caller was pressing their mouth directly against the microphone. Daniel ended the call immediately and turned off his phone. He went to sleep uneasy, but he tried to make sense of it. Perhaps it was a hacker, a prank, a system malfunction, anything but what it truly felt like. The next morning, he checked his call log. There were no incoming calls listed. He scrolled again and again, his stomach tightening. Nothing. His phone showed no sign of the calls he had answered. That was the first time he truly felt fear, a cold and rational kind that whispered something impossible was happening. That evening, as he sat on the couch eating takeout, he heard another sound, a faint buzz coming from the table beside him. His phone lit up. Again, his own number. Daniel didn't answer this time. He stared at the vibrating device, heartbeat pounding in his chest. The call rang until it stopped, but then something else happened. A muffled ringing echoed from upstairs. He froze. His phone was on the table in front of him. Yet he was certain he heard another phone, one with the same ringtone, coming from the top floor. He moved slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The ringing persisted, distant but unmistakable. He followed the sound to the spare bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was closed. When he reached for the doorknob, the ringing stopped abruptly, replaced by silence so complete it felt unnatural. He pushed the door open. The room was empty except for a few unopened boxes. Nothing inside could have made that sound. He backed out, closed the door, and tried to steady his breathing. Something was wrong with the house, and he could no longer deny it. But he didn't want to leave. He had invested too much already, and part of him feared the humiliation of telling others he fled because of phantom calls and imaginary sounds. That night, Daniel turned off all the lights and sat in bed, phone beside him. He didn't expect to sleep. At around 2 in the morning, his phone buzzed again. He stared at the screen. His own number. Hands trembling, he declined the call. A second later, he heard a soft vibration beneath his bed, like another phone lying directly on the wooden floorboards. He leaned over the side, peering into the darkness. The vibrating continued, rhythmic and unnerving. He reached down cautiously, but before his hand touched the floor, the vibration stopped. He sat up quickly, heart racing, and turned on the lamp. The warm light filled the room, but the comfort it offered was thin and temporary. Daniel forced himself to inspect under the bed. Nothing was there. No phone, no device, nothing that could have made that noise. He climbed back into bed and kept the lamp on. Minutes passed. Then another call. He stared at the screen, the name, Daniel, displayed boldly. Something inside him snapped. He answered. The breathing began immediately, but this time it was different. It wasn't slow, it was frantic, as if the caller was running or panicked. The sound shifted, accompanied by faint shuffling, like footsteps on wood. Daniel's breath caught when he realized it wasn't coming through the speaker. The breathing was coming from inside the room. He dropped the phone and leaped out of bed. The breathing grew louder, closer, but the room was empty. The air felt heavy, pressing against him. Then, the phone on the bed lit up again, the screen glowing unnaturally bright. The call was still active, yet the source of the breathing was no longer near his bed. It sounded like it was moving around him, circling, though nothing visible approached. Daniel grabbed the phone and ran out of the room, slamming the door behind him. He didn't stop running until he reached the living room downstairs. The breathing on the phone slowly faded, replaced by a crackling noise like static. Then the call ended by itself. His hands shook as he set the phone down. He knew he couldn't stay much longer, but exhaustion eventually pushed him into a restless sleep on the couch. When he woke hours later, the house was quiet. Too quiet. He checked his phone again. No call log. No evidence. But Daniel knew what he heard. And something else became clear to him that morning: the house wasn't merely making sounds. It was reacting to him. It knew he was afraid. And whatever was inside those walls had just begun reaching out. The rest of the day offered no relief. Every corner of the house seemed to hold a quiet tension, as though waiting for night to fall again. Daniel tried to busy himself with errands, cleaning, anything to distract from the dread brewing deep in his chest. But even in daylight, he felt watched. Shadows lingered where they shouldn't, and the air held an unnatural chill. When sunset approached, he felt the house settle, almost with anticipation. He understood the truth he had been avoiding: whatever lived there wasn't bound by night, only strengthened by it. As night thickened around the house, Daniel sensed a presence gathering strength within the walls, patient and intent. Every instinct urged him to leave, yet something held him still, as though the house itself waited for his next breath. Daniel remained downstairs long after darkness settled, unwilling to return to the bedroom where the unseen presence had breathed around him. The living room felt marginally safer simply because it was open, with fewer corners for shadows to gather. Yet even there, he sensed the house adjusting to his movements, reacting to his fear like a creature becoming aware of its prey. Every subtle groan of the floorboards now carried intention, as though the structure itself shifted to observe him. He spent the early hours pacing, trying to convince himself to leave, to walk out the door and abandon the house entirely. But an inexplicable heaviness pressed against him each time he approached the exit. His body slowed, his thoughts blurring, as though the air thickened the closer he came to stepping outside. It felt like the house didn't want him to go. More disturbingly, he felt as though something within him had begun to accept that pressure, allowing it to guide him back into the deeper rooms. As the hours crept toward midnight, the silence became suffocating. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Then, without warning, his phone vibrated on the coffee table. Daniel froze. The screen lit up. Again, his own number glowed brightly. But something was different this time. The phone didn't simply ring, it pulsed, flickering with a strange rhythm that made the light distort in unnatural patterns. It felt as though the device was not receiving a call, but being controlled. He stared at it, unable to look away, as the vibration intensified. He knew not to answer, yet he couldn't stop the dread rising in him. The vibration suddenly stopped, replaced by an icy stillness. Then, the phone lit up once more. A notification appeared. Not a call. A voicemail. He had never allowed a call to last long enough for one to be recorded. Yet there it was. Hands trembling, he opened the message. The file began playing automatically. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then the faint breathing returned, no longer distant. It sounded close, intimate, as though the source stood directly beside him. The breathing grew uneven, layered with an almost human struggle. Then a soft scraping noise joined it, like fingers dragging along wood. Daniel felt a chill radiate up his spine as he realized the sound matched the cadence of something moving inside the house. The recording ended abruptly. Daniel dropped the phone and stepped away, but the silence only deepened his dread. The house seemed to pulse with energy, aware that he had heard something he wasn't meant to. He tried to escape the overwhelming pressure building within the walls, but every step felt heavier, every breath tighter. He felt trapped in a structure that watched him, listened to him, and waited for him to acknowledge its presence fully. Desperation forced him to act. He grabbed his coat, intending to run out the front door without hesitation. But as he reached for the doorknob, his phone buzzed on the table behind him. He shouldn't have looked. But reflex forced him to turn. The screen lit up with another notification. A new voicemail. Except this one displayed a timestamp only seconds old, though he had never heard the phone ring. He didn't want to listen. But something compelled him, a mix of terror and an irrational need to understand what hunted him. He pressed play. The message began with static. Then he heard something unmistakable, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, pacing back and forth. The pattern felt familiar. Too familiar. The footsteps continued, and Daniel felt his stomach twist as he recognized the distinct rhythm of someone walking across the upstairs hallway floor. He had walked that same path dozens of times since moving in. Then, the recording shifted. The sound of footsteps moved more quickly, growing louder, descending as though coming down the stairs. Daniel's chest tightened. He stared at the staircase in front of him. Nothing was there. Yet the recording continued, the unseen steps reaching the bottom of the stairs, moving across the floor, inching closer to where he stood. But the worst moment came at the end of the message. All sound stopped, replaced by a single breath, one exhale, long, slow, and unmistakably positioned right behind where he would have been standing if the recording mirrored reality. Daniel dropped the phone, heart pounding violently. The message felt like more than a warning. It felt like a demonstration. He backed away from the stairs, refusing to turn his back on the shadows pooling near the top landing. The house had something inside it, something aware of him, something capable of mimicking his movements, following them, and replaying them as if to remind him he was never alone. He had reached his limit. He had to get out. His fear propelled him toward the front door again. He touched the knob and felt a jolt of cold shoot up his arm, like touching something alive. Ignoring the sensation, he twisted the handle. It didn't budge. Jammed, swollen, locked, whatever the explanation, it held with unnatural resistance. He pulled harder, using both hands, but the door refused to open. The house had sealed him inside. A deep, vibrating hum began to resonate through the walls, low and rhythmic, like the slow heartbeat of a massive creature. The air thickened with an electric charge. Daniel stepped back from the door, trembling. He felt watched from all directions, as though unseen eyes observed him through the walls, the ceilings, the floors. The hum grew louder, pulsing with a steady intensity that filled the entire house. Then, his phone lit up again. No ring, no vibration, just the screen waking by itself. A new voicemail appeared without any missed call notification. His throat tightened as he opened it. The message began with silence. Then came a faint rustling sound, like someone adjusting their position. Daniel's breath caught when the rustling grew clearer. He knew that sound. It was the fabric of his own couch, the exact fabric he was standing only inches from. The recording captured movement on the couch, slow and shifting, as if someone sat there, waiting. Then came breathing. Not distant. Not faint. Close. Heavy. Positioned exactly where he stood now. The message ended abruptly. The hum in the walls ceased. Silence pressed against him like a weight. Daniel stepped backward, eyes scanning every shadow. He felt a coldness behind him, subtle at first but intensifying steadily. The pressure on his back grew, like a presence leaning close enough to touch him. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. The unseen thing lingered, its presence unmistakable. Then, the phone lit again. This time, instead of a voicemail, a message appeared. A single line of text. He felt his blood freeze when he read it. The message contained only 2 words, but they struck him with a terror beyond anything he had felt in the house so far. The message said, "Turn around." He didn't obey. He couldn't. He squeezed his eyes shut, breath shallow, body trembling. The cold presence behind him intensified, as though something leaned closer, waiting patiently for him to acknowledge it. Seconds dragged into agonizing stretches of time. Finally, the pressure began to recede. The coldness lifted. Daniel dared to open his eyes. His phone, still in his hand, displayed another message. Only 1 word this time, soon. The lights flickered, dimmed, then plunged the house into absolute darkness. Daniel stood frozen, the glow of his phone the only source of light. The house had claimed him. And whatever had been calling from within its walls no longer needed the phone to reach him.